environmental concern, road monitoring, and the non-motorized recreation analysis projects, and the Virgin River Conservation Management Strategy. Her career experience before coming to BLM in 2003 includes working as a contract wildlife biologist and a GIS analysis for the Air Force, Navy Department of Energy, and Sempra Energy, and also teaching kindergarten through 12th grade. Let's welcome Carolyn.
I want to thank you all for inviting me to come here today. I see some faces that I recognize in the crowd, and some of you may have not have met me yet. Excuse me. I should have been more careful when I chose for lunch today. So basically all that wonderful bio means that I'm a wildlife biologist, and I work for the federal government and have for a long time. But I've also worked in private industry as well, so I understand some of the economic drivers that are out there. So today, my presentation is going to be on Gold Butte. I'm going to give you an introduction to the area if you haven't explored down in the Gold Butte region. And I'm also going to talk about some economic opportunities that we can see at the BLM and some opportunities maybe we can all meet and discuss further as we move forward. So with me today is Gail Smith, and she is our Assistant Field Manager for Resources. And we'll be here to answer questions, and I have cards so you'll be able to get in contact with me later. So let me just explain a little bit about who the Bureau of Land Management is. We're managed at the Southern Nevada District, is managed out of Las Vegas, and we oversee public lands, over 3 million acres of public lands here in Southern Nevada, including 1 million acres of split mineral estate, so the mining rights underneath private property. Generally, that management area goes from Mesquite to Laughlin to just south of Beatty, so it's includes all of Clark County and a whole portion of southern Nye County as well. Our district has 3 field offices, and all the public lands in Clark County are managed by the Las Vegas field office, and that includes Gold Butte, and that's where I work. So what's interesting about Gold Butte? Well, let's start first of all with where it is. Is there anyone here who doesn't know? Okay, there is. I got a couple people, and that's good. I prepped it. For those of you who've been there, just it'll take me a couple minutes to go through. So Gold Butte it's that bright blue part on the map. It's over 340,000 acres. It's a very large parcel of land. It's due south of Mesquite. It sits between the Virgin River, Grand Canyon Parashot National Monument, and the Overton arm of Lake Mead. It's within the Bunkerville Township of Clark County. It contains 7 special areas that were designated in 1998 by the Bureau of Land Management as areas of critical environmental concern. We call these ACECs. And hopefully I won't hit that acronym again, but you know the government, we love to create little short labels for things. The area is specially managed to protect and prevent damage to important resources like historic sites, scenic areas, rare and endangered species, and to protect the public from some natural hazards. So let's take you on a quick tour. In Gold Butte, you can discover fascinating historical remains that date back at least 3,000 years, such as rock art and caves and agave roasting pits and campsites. You'll find the remains of pioneer mining camps and ranches that hail from the 1800s, including historic mining town of Gold Butte. And that's not graffiti, or it is, it's very, very old axle grease signatures on the rocks. Stop and simply look around at the startling jagged limestone and basalt peaks jutting over 5,000 feet in the sky, it's Virgin Peak, and explore remote wilderness down in Jumbo Mountains Wilderness. Marble at the size of Devil's Throat, it's an enormous sinkhole. It's over 100 feet deep and nearly as wide. This is one of those natural hazards. We don't want people falling in that hole. Admire twisted sandstone sculptures and mysterious slot canyons found in Hobgoblin's Playground. Pull off the nation's first national backcountry byway and explore Whitney Pocket, a series of fascinating rock outcrops and mysterious caves, and discover prehistoric dwellings tucked into the crevices. If you seek even more adventure, hop into an off-road vehicle and turn onto an unmaintained side road. Along those roads, you may find Horse Spring and Red Rock Spring, which are home to the rare relic leopard frog. View spring wildflowers, including rare plants like the Las Vegas bear poppy, and see desert tortoises within one of their most critical habitat areas. So that's a little bit about Gold Butte. It's a very amazingly beautiful place, a very scenic place right outside your backyard. There are opportunities for commercial and public use in the Gold Butte area. And as a gateway community here in Bunkerville and Mesquite, Littlefield, there's opportunities to support the casual recreation for the area, and there are some other commercial uses that are compatible. So let's focus a little bit on the recreation side. The primary public use of Gold Butte is non-commercial recreation, so people going there on their own, camp, hike, those types of things. We have over 650 miles of open designated roads for vehicles and mountain bikes. Those roads are signed, and we're in the process of getting them numbered. We finally, Dwayne, have a numbering system approved, so we will be getting that done soon. The thrill in this area is what you're going to discover is not for speed. The speed limit's 35 miles an hour on the paved road and then 25 miles an hour everywhere else. And a lot of those places you can't even go 25 miles an hour, the roads are too rough. Vehicles must stay on designated routes. There's lots of recreational opportunities off of those roads. There's sightseeing by vehicle and by foot. There's endless opportunities for hiking. As I mentioned, all those roads and trails, there's lots of mountain biking opportunities. Horseback riding, which can occur cross-country as well as on the trails. Hunting, bird watching, exploring history from the distant past and the more recent past, and lots of camping. The BLM doesn't have a visitor center in the northeast part of the county. Our visitor center is located at Red Rock, and we don't have developed campsites. The public uses existing disturbed areas. In fact, most of the areas that the public's camping on today, people have been camping there for thousands and thousands of years. So there are opportunities for businesses to fill that void within the gateway communities. Obviously, we have all of the great hotel space here in town, and so there are some opportunities as we move forward. We're currently conducting an analysis of the non-motorized recreation in Gold Butte, and so we're looking at the need for camping facilities, picnic areas, hiking and horseback trails, parking and staging areas for people to do those activities, and educational signs and exhibits. And we'd love to have participation in that process, and there may be, beyond just us planning in-house and getting information from the general public, there might be some opportunities to really work together and brainstorm with the business community. So that's the casual recreation, people coming, the locals and the people coming through your community to recreate in Gold Butte. There are also opportunities for commercial activities within the area itself, and those are approved on a case-by-case basis, but it's important to know that they need to be compatible with us protecting the resources that are out there. We want to keep the area as beautiful in the future as it is today. And so there are some restrictions and limitations on some of those uses, and I'm going to hit a couple of them right now, just to explain it. So from a recreation perspective, we were just focusing on that. Organized groups and events are limited. So if someone wants to take a group there, what we need to do is have a conversation. So these are large organized events and groups. Some activities aren't allowed because they cause damage. So we do not, for example, we do not authorize any high-speed off-road racing and other speed-based type of events in that area. Desert tortoises in the road, or the area set aside to conserve the tortoise. So it's obvious it makes sense that we're not offering that activity. Non-speed events do have seasonal and size restrictions. So once again, we're trying to balance the conservation and the use. So it's important if you're planning an event to communicate with us really early on so that we can find the right time before you started getting a lot of advertising and things in place. Another challenge that we found is that events are sometimes proposed in areas where we have cultural resources. And so we need time to work with you to recite those activities somewhere else where we don't have to go out and do an archaeological dig before your activity happens. So the main message is come to us, talk with us. When you first have a glimmer of an idea, we don't share your ideas with other people in advance, so we're trying to keep business ideas between us and you. And so, so I think that's helpful, and earlier planning the better. Another commercial opportunity that is often BLM's approach for is for rights of ways. And so it's important to know that we do have a lot of limitations on the ability to put rights of ways in the area. We avoid construction of linear rights of ways like power lines within Gold Butte, try and do everything we can to site them outside the area, reduce new roads that are going in. Site type rights of ways like substations, detention basins, solar plants, and wind farms are not allowed as they're not compatible with protection of the area. So I just wanted to let you know that in advance because a lot of you haven't interacted with us and don't understand some of those limitations. Our land use plan for the Las Vegas field office, it has all the details in there, and it's like our Bible, and that's what we follow. So as I mentioned, there are opportunities to work with us and receive economic benefits from being a gateway to such an amazing place. And so I thought of a few that might get you thinking. Now this is just me brainstorming. This isn't an official, all up to us if we want to all work together on this. But one thing that I did notice is that there's limited information available to the public about what they can do in Gold Butte. BLM's not well known by the general public. They have no idea what our acronym stands for, and I could probably ask each of you and you can come up with 15 different names you prefer to use. And so what we find is the BLM rarely goes to our website, and because it's a government website, it's not easy to find the things that you want to find on there. So that's one of the very first easy ways that we can partner. And you have a wonderful website, the Chamber does, on your Mesquite page. But I went through it and I went into your go outside and play list, and you don't have your local areas listed. You have the regional national parks, which a lot of people are using to find your website as they're coming to visit. But you don't have Gold Butte listed, and neither do you have the Grand Canyon Parashant National Monument. So there's some really great opportunities to advertise some of the local unique things that you have in your backyard. So I went to see some other communities similar to yours, and I found that on Utah.com, they actually provide some really interesting information that the public would find useful. You can see down the bottom here that they actually show the activities that are in and around the community and places people are going. So it's a way that we can let the public know what compatible uses there are for recreation and other opportunities in the area, so that they come in and treat our neighborhood the way we would like it to be treated. They're doing the right types of activities. So it's just another idea. We know that getting people outdoors, we've become a much more sedentary society as a whole. Like trying to think, my two stepsons, getting them peeled away from the Xbox and to go outside and play is impossible. It's boring outside, they say. So, and the government spent a lot of time. We've had meetings in Washington, lots of stakeholder groups, and what they found is that the American public really does want to connect with nature. We remember what it was like, how we were with our families and how we cherished those memories of being with our families. And so there's some opportunities to leverage into this. And I was looking at some communities, and one of the communities that I saw was Boulder, Colorado. Here they have a bike network. Now they're trying to get everybody onto alternative forms of education, to get people to exercise. And what they've done is they tied their bike network and hiking and walking trails inside the community to those opportunities on the public land. As you can see, we have 650 miles of roads and trails in Gold Butte already that could be connected into your community. And we also have designated roads in the Mormon Mesa ACEC, which is to the west on the other side of Toquat Wash. So there's some great opportunities to sort of build off what's already in place and help get your community outside. And then here's a fun one. I'm from LA originally, I'll admit to it right up front. Have you ever heard about Pink's hot dogs? Okay, so yeah, so I brought a little bit of the menu, and you know, there are many businesses who leverage their local tourist attractions and sprinkle them into businesses who may not even be serving those areas. And I don't know, do we have a Whitney Pita Pocket place here in town? Or Butte Burgers? There are lots of opportunities to sort of build off of that branding throughout your community. And you can see Pink's, I mean, they have a Martha Stewart dog. I didn't even know they had that. I haven't been there in a while. So, I mean, I picked probably the most G-rated part of the list here for you. But you know, there's a lot of opportunities out there to leverage and to build off of it. And your Gold Butte dates that you're planning, you know, you're starting to do that branding. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities as we move forward. So I just have, sort of wrap up, I had some recommendations, and I'm doing this fast enough, so if I actually want to talk, there are questions, we have plenty of time to do that. But some of the recommendations I have is that you work closely with us as you plan your events and build your websites and marketing materials, so that we can make sure that the messages are compatible. The type of business you're bringing in is going to help, is not going to conflict with the way that we're stewarding the lands around you, and ideally so that we can leverage and get added benefit of working together on those things. And I recommend that you research other gateway communities similar to yours that benefit from the public lands. Learn from the way they're doing it, get some lessons learned on things that didn't work, and do it right the first time. And then, as I mentioned, we're working on that recreation planning for Gold Butte, and it would be great if we could participate more with that. So here's my contact information. I brought a whole giant stack of business cards. Some of you already know how to stalk me via email. But I actually do have a Gold Butte email that's set up that we're using right now for the recreation project, but I'm going to leave it up. And I have to apologize that it has all of those underscores. I tried to have it just be goldbutte@blm.gov, but because we're a very big organization, I had to locate it into BLM, and then Nevada, and then Southern Nevada before I could get it. But this information will be available, and that email is up on our website under the Gold Butte Planning. You'll be able to find it, and that's how you can reach me through snail mail. So that's just, I said, a very fast tour. And do you have any questions, comments, ideas? I'm here for you today. Yes, go ahead.
One reason I don't go out there, I've been out there once with a guy. I'm afraid to go out there because I can't find maps. I'm afraid if I go out there with just one vehicle and I have a breakdown, I'll die in the desert. Well, no, and so, I mean, having road signs up is really good, but we need maps. We need something so you feel safe.
Yes, I totally agree. And we do have maps available on our website, but if you don't know the area well, the map has limited usefulness without road numbers on the maps and then on the ground. So I am in the process of getting all of that implemented. We do have some kiosks up which have maps on them as well. There's a kiosk at the Riverside Bridge on 170. There's one at Whitney Pockets, and I actually have one as well out on the Virgin River out on Bunkerville Flats. There's like a point before you make the turn south and leave the river. So I do have maps of the area with the designated routes, and you can download the maps at home. They're PDFs, so you can get a plug-in to print them. And they actually are geo-referenced, so if you have the GPS unit, you can actually drive in the map, which is kind of cool, but it's, you gotta be a gadget guru to really get into that. And I could probably, if there's a lot of people, I could probably come give little tutorials on how to do it. I haven't figured out how to write it up in a way that's easy to get there. But so we're in the process of doing that, and as soon as we get those roads numbered and signed, I'll do a press release, and you guys will see it in the paper, and so you know it'll be there, and we'll try and get the maps, flood the neighborhood with them so that you can all get out there. The other thing that you brought up has to do with the fact that you're out there in a very remote area. We're not going to be able to fix that too much because with the all of the hills and valleys, it's hard to get cell reception and radio contact in that area. So we always recommend that you go out with plenty of water and food, and extra 2 spare tires is always a good idea. Yes?
Is there access to Lake Mead from Gulfview?
Yes, you can get to Lake Mead. You used to be able to get actually to the water as the lakes lowered. The distance to the lake is getting farther and farther away. But if you take Gold Butte Road right from Riverside Drive here, I guess is it Riverside Drive? 70 around the corner. And then you'll come to a big intersection, and there'll be a sign, and it'll tell you can go out to Fisherman's Cove and Clive's Landing area, so you can get out to the park. If you go way, way down south, you can continue out to Devil's, yeah? I'm trying to think. There are some other ways to get down closer to the river if you go down that way. Depends on who you talk to is what the names of some of these roads are. Yes, way in the back.
Yes, I would like to know your opinion on the fundamental difference between an ACEC and an NCA, and what you feel the positives and negatives of potential NCA would be from Gulfview.
Okay, I'm going to start with a qualifying statement. As a federal agency, we have no opinion about legislation. We just read the instructions and implement it when it happens. But here's the background. So an area of critical environmental concern is a local designation. So the local offices here and our state director identified the importance of the resources, the cultural sites, the critical habitat for the tortoise, all of those. And so we have the ability in our planning that we can actually do a local designation for a conservation area, and that's what an ACEC is, those areas of critical environmental concern. National conservation area has to be, a law has to pass, Congress has to pass a law, the president has to sign it in order for a national conservation area to be put in place. An NCA, a National Conservation Area, wilderness areas, the only one who could make them go away would be through passing legislation again and turning it around. With an area of critical environmental concern, that's a local planning decision. So through working with the public, that we can change those designations, make adjustments to the management at a local level. And so that's really the difference. One's passed by Congress, one's a local management decision. Yes?
So with that said, what kind of changes could we look forward to NCA being in place?
If an NCA was designated, it would depend on what the legislation says the management would be. So I can't even tell you what it is, because if you look at different national monuments, national conservation areas around the country, they're enabling legislation, just like if you look at Grand Canyon National Park compared to Lake Mead National Recreation Area, that legislation that designates them is what tells you, gives you the roadmap of how it will be managed. Sometimes the legislation will tell you very specific things about these activities are allowed and these ones aren't. Other legislation leaves it to a planning process later, where the local public is going to be able to get more involved. So I can't even tell you, until you see proposed legislation in front of you, what it might be. Did that answer your question as much as I can?
I'm still going out.
It's okay. All right, over here.
Are there any plans to build a campground in conjunction with the Gulfview area?
So that's one of the things that we're analyzing in this non-motorized recreation analysis. We know that we've had increased visitation in that area, that the places people are camping have gotten wider. We've worked with a lot of community groups, we had lots of volunteers. We've put up some posts, replanted vegetation, and tried to pull those back a little bit. But there's increasing demand. I have road counters out in the area, and I know we're getting on average 33 cars a day. Obviously there's some weekends where we get a lot more people in, during the week a lot less. But there's pretty regular traffic coming down. People regularly camping, especially in the Whitney Pockets area and down at the town site. So we want to look at what our options are. At this point, we don't have funding to construct anything, so we're looking at what the range of options are, getting input from the public on how you feel about that. And if the decision is that we would like to have more infrastructure, then we'll go seek funding after we make the decisions to do that. But we're going to have some issues. You know, we got to do some archaeological digs and some things like that along the way. We know that with the visitation, not everybody comes self-contained, so there might be need for pit toilets. We know that there's probably places where people are parking and there's not enough room for the number of people who are going to visit places like Falling Man, Petroglyph site. And so having some boundaries and areas that are kind of designated for parking can be very beneficial to help the public, to create a destination so they know they're there, and also to protect the resources on the other side of the fence.
There wouldn't be any restrictions on opening up a private campground nearby, right?
Private campgrounds on private land are all about the private landowner and the zoning and those things that you need to get from the local government. So we don't have any problem with competition. We're not even worried about that at all. Go ahead,
One
Beck.
last question. In the NCA, there's some, I know that existing in wilderness area is a wilderness area. The proposed NCA has got quite a bit of wilderness area that is possibly being designated. In the definition of the federal government or BLM, are those areas scientifically proven to be wilderness areas?
I have not looked at our inventory of wilderness characteristics to be able to answer that question for you. We have 2 designated wilderness areas. They were designated in 2002 by Congress in the Clark County Natural Resource and Conservation Act. So that's Lime Canyon and Jumbo Springs. They're down in the very southern end of Goldview. So what I can tell you is that any wilderness that's designated by Congress would be managed in accordance with the Wilderness Act. So they would be areas where you wouldn't have motorized or mechanized vehicles, and they're managed for pristine and primitive nature and outstanding scenic qualities.
Do we have any roads in that wilderness area that are being used currently?
So what we have are the designated roads. And I'm not sure of all the areas that public who are requesting the NCA designation are requesting, and if they are proposing or interested in closing any of those roads. You'd have to look at the packages, talk with the congressional delegation to see what they're talking about. But we do have the current designated roads, and we're managing public use for use on those roads at this time.
Could you tell me the difference between a national conservation area and a national monument, and the difference on the restrictions of use between the 2 designations from the federal government?
I'm just looking at Gail here, and I'm not sure that there is a complete, clear definition about why you would call one a monument and the other a conservation area. Traditionally, national monuments were transferred from the BLM to management by the National Park Service, but about 15-20 years ago, the federal government did not make that an automatic. The BLM does manage a number of national monuments around the country. So national conservation areas were our equivalent of like a national park when our agency was managing it. So it comes down to the decisions of Congress deciding what they want to name it. So, Grand Canyon Parish National Monument could have been a national conservation area, except that some of the land is managed by the Park Service. So that may be the reason that it has a national monument, because they only have national monuments and national parks. So I know it's not a very satisfying answer.
Do national monuments have the same kind of restrictions on them as wilderness do as far as mechanized and motorized vehicles?
It all depends on the legislation. So with Grand Canyon Parish National Monument, it talked about still maintaining a network of roads for vehicles. I believe there was discussion about grazing and that decision to be analyzed as they went through their planning process. The same happened with the Carrizo Plains National Monument in California. So it really depends on what they decide with the legislation. If it says that it's going to be managed as roadless, then the agency who manages the property manages it that way.
Okay,
If they say it's the other, then it's the other.
thank you.
Dwayne?
Could you explain how the ACEC designation was brought out here based on the Clark County Multi-Species Habitat Plan originally, like in '98?
So the history of designation of the ACEC?
Yes.
So that actually happened, well, the Clark County Habitat Conservation Plan, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, that's the permit that the county manages for the cities and all of the residents of the county, that handles all of your Endangered Species Act permitting so that you don't have to. You just pay a fee when you construct on your property and get on with your lives, and then the mitigation's happening. The designation of the ACECs was done in coordination with that permitting process, dealing with the Private Land Endangered Species Act issues, but it was truly a BLM's decision. And so when we do a plan, we open up a plan, we are tasked in our guidelines to look across the landscape at areas that are important. They're nationally and regionally significant cultural sites and habitat. And so we then nominate those areas, or the public can come to us and nominate those areas of critical environmental concern. And that's what happened in Gold Butte. We all know it's beautiful, there's lots of amazing things, and the BLM recognized that. And so they were nominated as ACECs. The county and all of the private landowners receive benefit through the Clark County Habitat Conservation Plan, in the fact that that area has been set aside as mitigation, so it's the offset. You can build on your private property here in Mesquite and in Las Vegas, tortoises get moved out of the way, and all the good deeds that go to offset that impact go in places like Gold Butte. So that's where the road designations, the monitoring, restoration, a lot of the funding has come from the Habitat Conservation Plan. So there's some benefits there, but the Clark County HCP only gets credit for the tortoise critical habitat in Gold Butte. The rest of it was designated by the BLM, and they haven't taken credit for those acres protected. And we can talk a lot more about that, Dwayne, if you want. Thank you so much.